It's the Mike Missanelli podcast on the BetRivers Network.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Mike Missanelli podcast, episode number 102. Doing it Tuesday, August 15th. And, a mundane summer has certainly decided to pick up a little bit. Now, we really had planned to go full bore Philadelphia Eagles today, and we'll get to them in a second. But because, they've had a preseason game, finally we could talk about it, and they're having a joint practice now with the Browns. And this podcast, of course, is brought to us by the great people at BetRivers and the BetRivers Sports Network. Jimmy Harden has opened up another can of worms here, and there's so many worms to take out of this can. So let's go with the issue. And the current issue is that he is at some kind of Adidas event in China, and he's got the microphone, and he's holding court, and he says, all right, let's play exactly what he said.
Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will never be a part of an organization that he's a part of. Let me say that again. Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will never be a part of an organization that he's a part of.
All right, so basically he calls Daryl Morey, his boss, a liar, and he says he will never play for any organization that he is a part of. He's angry, okay? I had a boss that lied to me too, and I was equally as angry. But let's see now where this puts James Harden, right? So the first of all, I mean, he apparently was talking to some kind of a camp there, and as far as I know, it was in China. Were his words being translated to the Chinese people that were there? Like, did they actually know what he was trying to say? I know, like, anybody on social media, and it's going to get back to all of us what he said, but that was the first thing I thought about. Did they really understand what he's saying here? There was kind of a murmur in the crowd, I guess, from the American-speaking people that were there. But so here's the thing. The Sixers had released a couple of days earlier a statement saying that they are no longer exploring a trade for James Harden. Now, that's BS because to say that doesn't mean you would turn down a trade, because a trade could come down the road and you're not going to hold fort and say, all right, no, we're not going to trade now because we announced it. No, you're still going to try to make some kind of a trade. The reason why you say something like that is to prepare the other side for their contingency. Like, we're prepared not to make a trade, so you're going to have to deal with this, and now the ball's in your court, and you're going to have to decide that the players sit out, and if you sit out, you're not going to help yourself. So they make that kind of a statement. Now, Harden, that was the trigger. But the bigger trigger goes back in time with the Morey situation. So let's go back in time with it. Morey signed him last year to a contract that was about $15 million less. And Harden was on board because with that extra money, they were able to sign a couple guys he wanted to sign. P.J. Tucker, Daniel House. All right? So at that point, what was the promise made to James Harden? Not that any kind of promise would be legally binding, but what was the promise? Now, if Morey said to him, sign this contract for us so we could sign these two guys that you want, and we will sign you to a max the following year. If Morey said that, he's wrong, and it's sinister to do something like that. I don't think Morey is dumb enough to say something like that. I think Morey is slick enough to say, James, do this for us, and we'll take care of you the following year. Now, what does take care of you mean? Take care of you is relevant. It's all relevant, right? So Morey says, okay, taking care, I don't mean max, because I know, and you should know, that you are not a max player anymore. In addition to that, your performance at the end of the year would not indicate a value higher than what we put on it. So I'm sure Morey's idea of we'll take care of you was a shorter term contract, maybe a 3-year contract with the third year being a player option at just maybe a little more than $35 million that they paid him the year before, or maybe the same. I don't know. There had to be a raise in there somewhere. That's what I think Morey's idea was. Harden's idea in hearing the words was, okay, he's going to take care of me. He's going to give me the max. Now, this is the difference between a player who does not understand the realism of his value. James Harden obviously is a narcissistic NBA basketball player who still thinks he's a great player. Great players have a really difficult time looking at themselves in the mirror saying, I'm a lesser player now. They think that they deserve the max. And they think they deserve it based on, I'm still a great player, but also look what I've done in this league. That's why I deserve the max. Management's looking at it like, no, we have to build a team. If we give you the max, we hamstring ourselves to actually build a team. So I know there's a lot of people that are blaming Daryl Morey here. And I have to ask you this question. Is Daryl Morey's loyalties more to one player named James Harden or to the 76ers in building a team that could win something? It's one thing to look at Morey and say, wow, he really took Harden down the river there. It's the other thing to say, he's not more. He can't be more loyal to Harden than it can be to the 76ers. So that's the way I look at it here. Here's the bottom line here. The Sixers still hold the cards, and I don't know what's going to happen here. But when you have this kind of destruction, nothing good can happen to it. And the Sixers are not going to win anything next year, whether Harden comes back or not. Because if Harden comes back, you know exactly what's going to happen. He's not the type of player that's going to say, okay, I was wrong, I'm just going to play now. He's so dug in now that anything that he does to come back to the Sixers makes him look like a sellout. And the worst thing that a player of that ilk can look at is to be a sellout. He's not going to kowtow to the machine in this situation. He's James Harden, and he's not going to limp back in like he's some kind of servant to the Philadelphia 76ers. So he's going to be dug in. There is this, first of all, in contract law, if you don't perform the contract, you don't get paid, and the contract doesn't toll. But in addition to that, in the CBA, there is a provision that says if you don't play, if you have a 30-day gap in when you're supposed to play and when you're not, the contract does not toll, and you're still property of Philadelphia 76ers. Now, technically, he can really mess with the Sixers and show up and then take the next 29 days off, right? He could possibly do that. And he's sinister enough to do that. He could also show up overweight. He can also show up and play with no zeal at all and face the wrath of the fans, which he never cared about anyway. So, or he can hold out. And if he holds out, he's got nothing to gain because he's not performing the contract and he's not doing himself any favor. At that point, it could turn into a Ben Simmons situation where he's out. The Sixers proceed to go along and play the season, and they still work a trade, and maybe by February, some team sees James Harden as palatable, and that's when they make the deal, and that's when they get the best deal, because that's what they did with Ben Simmons, and I'm sure Morey is not going to just give him away here. He is willing to risk the discord about this situation. Why? Here's what Daryl Morey knows that the fans may not know. The Sixers aren't going to win anything next year. The Sixers aren't as good. They're not with Harden as good as Boston, Milwaukee, and maybe Miami. Without a player commensurate to Harden's talents, they're not good either. So the Sixers know in the front offices, we're not going to win anyway, and we're asking our fans to just go along with a year where maybe they think that some kind of Nick Nurse magic can make us win, but we know we're not going to win. So we're playing this as a gap year. And after all this is done, we got all this money because we got Tobias off the books. We got Harden off the books. They're basically throwing it in the fans' face. Now, I hate that kind of mentality. I really do, where clandestinely they're taking their fans for a ride, a bad ride that's going to lead to nowhere. And that unsettles me. But then I look at the situation and I go, what could possibly be the solution that gets this situation through it and it makes the Sixers a contender? None. With Harden, they're not a contender. Without him, they're not a contender. With them making a bad deal, they're not a contender. So Sixer fans, I hate to break the news to you, but here's the news. Focus on the Phillies trying to get to the World Series and focus on the Eagles trying to get to the Super Bowl, and then just try to get through another goddamn winter of no winning with the Sixers and the Flyers. Let's bring producer Darren in here. Darren, you just heard what I had to say. Your opinion.
Well, see, look, Morey's gotten killed since yesterday, rightfully so. But, I'm so sick. Harden is the most destructive player in league history. He has done this virtually every place he's been, with every organization. It is staggering to me that he would make those comments out loud, knowing full well there are 100 camera phones on him. That was planned. From what been reported, his agent advised him not to do it. It was a horrible move. This organization over the last 10 years is nothing shy of a complete and utter dumpster fire. They're a mess from the owner down. They are a mess. Now you got Embiid scrubbing his social media sites. No Philly, no Sixers. It's just it never ends with this goddamn organization. It never ends.
And the owner.
By the way, what the hell is Nick Nurse thinking today?
Well, yeah, he's gonna have to deal with all this. The owner, interestingly enough, could care less because he's now obsessed with his boyhood football team that he just bought. Right, so he's not gonna come in there and do anything. Harden predicted this. Harden's tweet weeks before the China thing was to get ready for things to be uncomfortable. So this is his first salvo. But here's the thing: Harden has not said that Morey promised him a max, which leads me to believe that Morey didn't promise him a max, because Morey's not stupid enough to promise him a max. He knew what the extent of where his career was at that point. I'm quite sure he said, "We'll take care of you. Don't worry about it. You're my guy." That meant maybe a 3-year deal with a player option. That meant certainly not max money. And Harden was under the impression, because of his relationship with Morey, that Morey was just going to give up the max. And I go, and people that say, like, "Oh yeah, he lied to him." Well, maybe he didn't lie to him. Maybe he was, he misled him a little bit. But Morey has to build a team. He just can't give out candy money because he's James Harden.
The other thing he might have promised him was, because it's been widely known, I guess, known enough that he wants to go play for the Clippers. Maybe he said, "I'll get you out there." Maybe he said, opt in, I'll get you to the Clippers. And then when he called, because you remember, Harden didn't say this until the Sixers came out publicly and said, trade talks are off, we're not moving him. I think Harden, up to that point, thought he was promised or told he was getting moved to LA where he wanted to be. Because all these guys just want to go where they want to be.
But here's the thing. It's one thing to say we'll try to move you to LA. It's the other thing is we're not going to give you to LA. We can't give you to LA. Or do you understand the business of basketball, James, that we have to also make a good deal for us? I mean, that's the thing where Harden is totally out of his mind. And maybe Morey did mislead him, but the misleading was just a part of doing business in the NBA to protect your own organization. So, again, the Sixers are a mess this year. Nothing really is going to get resolved to the point where we're going to open a season and think they're a contender. And it's a shame, but this is a gap year. Get used to it. And you're going to have a lot of cap space after next year, and it's not going to be Embiid moving as much as he scrubbed his Instagram and acted like a baby now over this whole thing. So it's almost laughable. All right, so that's our Sixers chat for today, and we'll continue to talk about this because this is a fluid situation. So something may happen by Thursday when we come on and do our next podcast.
We do have Pompey on Thursday.
Yeah, we'll take Keith Pompey on Thursday to explain it because he's covering it. In the meantime, let's focus on our Philadelphia Eagles.
It's the Mike Missanelli podcast on the BetRivers Network.
All right, let's go deeper into these Philadelphia Eagles. It's a really tough time to read the Eagles. We know they're good. There's a couple positions that we're looking at. We just had kind of a mundane preseason game. We've got to practice with the Browns, all that kind of stuff. But this won't percolate until they actually play a game. But let's get some insights on what they look like right now from the man who covers the Eagles, been covering them for a while now, for ESPN and ESPN.com. He's the great Tim McManus joining us. Hello, Timmy.
Mike, it's good to be with you, man. Good to see you. What's happening?
Great to see you. And so, listen, I know I'm always going to get a straight scoop from you, and it's funny when you cover a team. There are various stages that are more exciting than others. We know this is a good team, so the storylines aren't plentiful. So we're on a kind of a wait and see system until they actually, what I think, play a game. I don't know how much we're even going to learn in preseason, but what? Give me your assessment of what they look like right now. Are they, in your mind, right now, a championship caliber team?
Yeah, I think so. When you look at especially the rest of the NFC, I don't know that anybody got appreciably better. All of the quarterback play, like the quality quarterback play outside of Jalen Hurts, and I don't know even where you go. There's not too many after that in the NFC. When you can put all those factors in, Mike, yeah, I would say that they're in really good position to get back to the dance. It's not an easy thing to do. The stat that I throw out all the time is that the last NFC team that went to the Super Bowl and then got back there and lost and then got back there the next year was the 1974 Vikings. So it's not something that's easy to do. These guys are going to have to kind of mentally, ramp back up. But the offense looks dynamite, and the defense is a work in progress. Assuming they catch up, then they're in really good position.
It's funny that concept you just mentioned about trying to get back there again. It always seemed to me that if you lose a Super Bowl, you have tremendous motivation to get back there. And I know Sirianni pushes that pedal all the time. So, give me the mental dynamic of that whole thing and how they sit with that right now.
Yeah, so I think it's kind of a tricky thing to navigate as a head coach because you don't want to dwell on it, but you also want to use it. It's right there and impossible to ignore, but you don't get back there unless the focus is like laser on the here and now. And so that was kind of what Sirianni was presented with at the start of the offseason. The way that he chose to do it is the first time he got in front of the players in the auditorium at the NovaCare complex. He had a giant picture behind him of his players walking off the field in Arizona with the Chiefs confetti falling on their head. So that's how he set the tone. But at the same moment, he's like, but you can't really, I want you to use that as motivation, but you can't really think about it. You have to think about what's going on now. And so I think that's sort of part of it. It's just a big mental game. You invest so much physically and emotionally into getting to that moment, and then you come up empty. And then you got to do the climb all over again. They're fortunate that they have a quarterback that's kind of, wired and keeping it the right way and keeping his guys, sharp. So that helps, but it's not an easy thing to overcome.
Timmy, as you come into the season covering this team, I was curious to know what your approach would be. Now, we know that they're good. On paper, they're good, and it looks like they're on paper the best team in the NFC. But there are these little trinkets that popped in, like a change of coordinators, maybe a linebacker problem, maybe a safety problem. So how did you approach covering this team? What were you looking for?
Well, my eyes are really dialed in on defense because, usually, Mike, this time of year, you often say, well, the defense is ahead of the offense. It doesn't need to be like as sharply run of a unit as opposed to offense where everything just has to work sort of methodically together. But that's not the case this year. Like the offense is ahead of the defense. The offense looks very efficient. Jalen Hurts knows where he's going with the football. It's another year in Nick Sirianni's system. So it's just like, everything is orchestrated really well. But on the defensive side of the ball, it's really where my eyes are trained because they do have a new defensive coordinator. And Sean Desai, has a good reputation, but he wasn't their first choice. One of the reasons I think that they were pissed off that Jonathan Gannon wasn't necessarily as forthright as he needed to be about that Arizona job is because they would have hired Vic Fangio if they knew that he was leaving. And, and they lost out on Fangio. And so they brought in Sean Desai. They lost both of their starting safeties. They lost both of their starting linebackers. And they lost one of their most productive players in Javon Hargrave along the defensive front. And so I've been looking at that, trying to discern, whether they're ready for prime time or not. Because the rest of the offense certainly is. The opportunity is right there, but the defense has to hold up its end of the bargain.
Let's talk about, I assume, the weakest part of their defense or the most uncertain part, which is the linebacker situation. And Nakobe Dean hampered with an injury. And they went out and they acquired two more guys. Now, what is that an indication of? Is that an indication from what you're seeing in practice that Nakobe's really not showing up or showing out?
I don't think it's really reflective of Dean so much as it is like who's going to be his running mate. And so there's been when Dean has been on the field, and he's been hobbled by an ankle injury that kept him out of 3 or 4 practices. But when he's been on the field, he's been the constant. So I think the new additions, it's more reflective of the guys who are beside Nakobe Dean as opposed to Nakobe Dean himself. So what we've seen when he's been healthy, and he has been limited by an ankle injury, so he missed 3 or 4 practices, Mike. But when he's been on the field, he's been the constant with the first team. And then it's been more of a rotating cast with Christian Ellis and Nicholas Morrow kind of rotating in that second spot. And one of the most eye-opening things is when Miles Jack gets signed on a Sunday. His first practice is on a Tuesday, and then we see him in with the first team that day. And then we hear after practice that he was considering becoming an electrician or a plumber, that he was, just sitting on his couch watching playing Call of Duty when he got the call. And now he's in there and he's getting these meaningful reps. And so that kind of tells you the state of the linebacker position about as well as anything else will. Like, it is totally unsettled. They feel good about Dean, but he's unproven at this level. He was dynamite at Georgia, but he didn't really get a role on the defense last year as a rookie. And he's going to have to prove it. And certainly the guys next to him are question marks.
That position just seems like to be an afterthought with this franchise. I mean, I guess they know what they're doing, but it's kind of weird how they just kind of slog through the linebacker. It'll take care of itself, whatever. I don't know. In this NFL, is that the right philosophy?
Generally speaking, but I think they take it to an extreme. And so when you're roster building and they put the emphasis on the defensive front, and then it's on the cornerbacks, and then safeties, and then linebacker. I mean, it's in that order. And you see year after year that they're always the lowest in allocated dollars to the linebacker spot. And so, they had a really good year until the very end last year defensively, and that's how they've been kind of living. And I think it's generally right. But if you take anything to an extreme, it's not a good thing. And that includes at linebacker. And, last year, TJ Edwards was pretty good for this team. And at safety, C.J. Gardner-Johnson was pretty critical to them and led the team and led the league in interceptions despite missing 5 games. And I don't know that they've adequately replaced, either of those spots, honestly.
Let's look now at the other position, which is safety. And Blankenship's had a solid camp from all indications, so he looks like he's cemented in there. The other safety is an interesting position. I'm looking at the kid from Illinois. He looks like he makes some plays. He looks like he's wild and all over the place. And I don't know that a great team can afford that. But what do you think of Brown?
I like Brown a lot, and I know that the Eagles do too. Like when they got him in the draft, they felt really good about it, and thinking that he could become a staple on this defense. And their opportunity is right there. Blankenship has been the one guy that's been consistently on the field with the first unit, but similar to linebacker, it's been a kind of a rotating cast around him. Terrell Edmonds, Kayvon Wallace, those guys have been mixing in, but very interesting coming off of what I thought was a pretty strong preseason game from Sidney Brown. The next practice out, which was yesterday against the Cleveland Browns in that joint practice, Sidney Brown getting some first team reps. So he's starting to, come up the rails here. It looks like he's going to have an opportunity to get some playing time. I think the one concern there would be this defense believes so much in protecting from the big play. But, this is an organizational thing. Obviously, you saw that a lot with Gannon. So the safeties play back. They're conservative. Brown doesn't have that conservative bone in his body. And so how does that all mesh is something I'm really curious about. But in terms of ability, in terms of like a guy that you look at and like, yes, that's a safety. It's Sidney Brown. So I'm curious to see how his play continues to increase as we get closer to the regular season.
Talking to Tim McManus, he covers Eagles for ESPN.com. And Tim, let's stay with the defensive backfield. Now the corners, we don't worry about the starters. And Job has played well, and they like McPherson. And then you get Maddox in there. So that's 5. Will they carry 6? And if so, if they won't, is Kalei Ringo in danger of being cut? Because he was a pretty premium pick as well.
Yeah, I don't know that they would part with Ringo. I mean, you can make the case that Ricks especially what you saw with the pick six and the number of PBUs that he
Yeah,
had.
Eli Ricks.
Yeah,
Yes.
that he had in the the preseason opener against Baltimore. That all right, well maybe they need to take a closer look at him. But I would say like just looking at generally the depth chart that they roll out there and seeing the ability of Keely Ringo, like he looks like somebody Mike that like belongs on the Legion of Boom. He's just like he's built like this big strong corner that has a lot of upside. And so I think that Ringo would make it over Ricks, and then you just kind of hope that maybe you can get him on the practice squad.
All right. We haven't talked about, we have talked about it because he played one play and he dazzled on the one play. And there's such a dearth of exciting stories to write about that Jalen Carter, gets a lot of hype for the one play.
Yeah.
So tell me about that whole defensive line organization and rotation that they have going right now in your eyes.
That was a heck of a play. that was a play. In fact, Fletcher Cox talked about that afterwards. He and Jalen Carter had a conversation, and Carter beat the guard so cleanly that he thought it was a screen. Like that's how quickly he got into the backfield. He's like, "Wait, what's going on here?" That's how easy of work that he made it, and it shows what we know about him, that he's got tremendous athleticism and ability, and it's never been about that. He was the consensus best prospect that was coming out of that draft. It was just a matter of like we know that the backstory and the off field stuff, and would he be able to put it all together, and that remains to be seen. But the way that he's flashed, there's no denying that if he puts together, he can be a star. And very early on, he can make an impact. And so basically what we've seen from that rotation, it's been Fletcher Cox and Jordan Davis as the starting tackles. And then you have Milton Williams that rotates in, and we're starting to see more Jalen Carter getting looks with the first team. So I think he's going to be a big part of this rotation very early. We saw him even against the Browns in that first joint practice, him lining up outside a little bit. So they're starting to move him around, see the type of different chess pieces that they can use here. And if he keeps on this trajectory, like he could have, he wants to be the defensive rookie of the year, and he's got that ability.
All right, Nolan Smith, buzz early, and then it's kind of tailed off a little bit. What did you see in the joint practice with the Browns?
Yeah, so Nolan Smith is the guy that you would expect to flash in a training camp setting because he is so fast coming around that edge that especially when the guys are in shorts and shells, he's going to stand out among them. And then the big question is since he's got a kind of a leaner frame, is that once you get into the pads, is he going to have a second move that he can get around the edge with and beat an offensive tackle? So that's something that he's going to continue to work on. But the buzz around him has been really good. People have been calling him kind of like a junior Hassan Reddick, and he's got that look about him. Every time that he goes up against Lane Johnson is a learning experience for him. And Johnson, like he does for most guys, he just swallows him up. But afterwards, teaches him up and say, why don't you try this move and why don't you try that? And so it's a little bit of a work in progress, but there is also some promise there with Nolan Smith. He needs to add a little bit to his arsenal, but I think he's going to be part of the rotation as well.
Yeah, I don't know if there's much to talk about offensively, except maybe running back rotation at this point. They're so deep there. And DeAndre Swift, I thought he was just a tremendous acquisition to make splash plays. So what are you seeing offensively right now?
Well, that's the first time on an unofficial depth chart I ever saw 5 running backs all listed with the first team. It's like, what is this? And that goes to show that it is a fluid situation. That's the way that Jamal Singleton, the running backs coach, called it. He said it's very fluid right now. But we're starting to see as we move a little bit closer that there's the 3 that stand out above the rest of them, and that's Kenny Gainwell and it's DeAndre Swift, and that's Rashad Penny. And I don't know that you're ever going to be able to really nail down like this guy's going to get the bulk of the carries in this given week. I think it'll kind of change as the matchups change throughout the week. There's not going to be that pure number one like there was with Miles Sanders or like you'll find in other organizations around the league here, Mike. But Swift is a guy that's going to be on the field a lot because how can't you like the different mismatches that he gives you? And we've seen him line up all over the field. He motions into the slot. He goes out and spreads out wide. Sometimes it's for a quick bubble screen. Sometimes that's for him to, for a fly pattern down the field. We've seen Jalen Hurts, look over to his left, see DeAndre Swift lined up outside, opposite a linebacker, check the play, and then hit Swift deep down the sideline. That's something that I think they're pretty excited about.
Yeah, Miles Sanders. Speaking of Miles Sanders, I don't know why it's just popped into my head, but I happened to be watching a BTN, and they had a Penn State football moment or whatever it was. They beat Ohio State in 2016, and the kick returner in that game for Penn State was freshman Miles Sanders.
How about that?
How about that?
How'd he go?
Now the running back was some guy named Saquon, so the starter. So I,
Never heard of
didn't
him.
pay much attention to the running back. All right, so Timmy, let's just go look at this overall situation, because I'm trying to find a reason why the Eagles would not be the number one seed. And I know things can happen. It's all about injuries, but I mean, who challenges them? The 49ers are a good team, and they have an axe to grind here, but their quarterback situation is really kind of up in the air. So, like, realistically, what do you see here with the Eagles? How good are they? Where did they stand in the power rankings?
I mean, I go through the same process as you, trying to look for the teams that could unseat them. And we know the NFL is, you can't pin it down. You think and then something happens. But just looking at it right now, like at the starting line or just before the starting line, they're the favorite in the NFC. I mean, they just are. Dallas is a talented team, so it's like it's Dallas and it's San Francisco as the obvious competitors for the Eagles this year. But we've kind of seen the song and dance from Dallas before. They got a lot of hype. They have a lot of talent. They haven't always been able to put it together. And so it's kind of like, don't believe it until you see it type of thing. And San Francisco, it's just, the quarterback matchup between what they have. And, Brock Purdy had a nice rookie year, but between Purdy and Hurts, gives the Eagles a pretty clear advantage in there. There'll be a team that surprises, whether that's Detroit, is loaded up with some talent. There's always one. Like, I like Justin Fields, so maybe he carries Chicago further than people are expecting them to. There's always one team that you don't necessarily peg that rises up, but the Eagles are in a great spot, and should be considered the favorites in the NFC.
All right, Timmy, always a pleasure to touch base with you, and I know your busy season is coming up, so hopefully we can get you down the road a little bit, talk about some Eagle football. Thanks for coming on, brother. Good to see you.
I would love it. Good to see you guys. Take care.
It's the Mike Missanelli Podcast on the BetRivers Network.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks Tim McManus for coming on. Talk Philadelphia Eagles. It is now time for Mike Unleashed. We do Mike Unleashed every podcast here on the Mike Missanelli Podcast. So let's start. We haven't even talked about him yet. Let's start with the Phillies. All right, the Phillies, they lose 2 of 3 of the Twins. But the big thing on the weekend were the reunions. It's always nice when they have the reunions, and they broadcast from the lounge and they bring some people in. Now, the last time they did this it was a very rude Pete Rose who embarrassed everybody with his bawdiness. So Pete was not part of this one. But interestingly enough, 2 guys were one wasn't and one was. So it was the 83 team and 93 team reunion. Larry Anderson was a member of both, which was nice. He threw out the first pitch. The first thing I noticed about the reunion people that came back was the 93 team, no Lenny Dykstra, but Kurt Schilling. Now, I immediately thought that the Phillies, with that choice, had put a 1 nutbag limit on the whole proceeding. So they couldn't have 2 nutbags. They only could have 1, and Lenny was left out this year, and Schilling was invited. So there you go. But it's always a nice touch when the Phillies bring back guys. Juan Samuel was there from the 83 team. And then, of course, you get the usual suspects. Wes Chamberlain and Tony Longmire always come back for the it's really interesting that those guys. Steve Jeltz always comes back. Like guys that they just want to.
Every time you say Wes Chamberlain's name, I think of those stories.
They just want to be part of something, right? They really weren't that significant a piece, but they like to come back for it. Mickey Morandini, of course, was there, and who else was there? Mike Lieberthal. Was back there, guys. It's nice to see those guys every now and then. The reunion was nice. The Philly fans like that kind of thing. Where the Phillies landed at this point, I'm not worried about them whatsoever. They lost 2 to 3 Twins, big deal. They are still the top wild card team. They're not going to beat the. I had a friend of mine say, "Hey, I'm telling you, they're going to go on a rally. They're going to win the division." They're not going to win the division. The Braves would have to lose games. The Braves aren't going to lose that many games for the Phillies to win the division. So Phillies reunion, nice touch again. Congratulations to the Phillies. Very heady to impose a one nutbag limit on bringing back some guys. So nice work by the Phils and their staff for that. All right. So the second thing I want to talk about is the rage against the umpires. Now, my producer Darren really has he takes a fit with these umpires. Now, there was a young umpire that made a couple of bad calls on balls and strikes that forced Alec Boehm to go ballistic, or he slammed his bat, and then he got fined for that. They pointed to him, that's a fine, and then he slammed his helmet, and then that's an ejection. So Alec Boehm goes out. And of course, it was a bad pitch. If you look at it, we have the benefit of a box. The umpires do not have the benefit of a box. The umpires looking at that ball in real time, where they see the fly of the ball, and maybe their eyes see it cross the edge of the plate before it lands outside. I the balls and strikes to me have always, I said it years ago, that it should be that the technology that tennis uses, that there should be an electronic box that's set for the height of each player, and then you don't have the problem. Now, the only problem there is, where's the home plate umpire stand? Because he still has to make calls and plays at the plate. But that would eliminate the whole situation. You wouldn't have any arguments at all. But I always think umpires I hate them, but I always think they get a raw deal from fans, because they're in live time and they're looking at things like that, and calls usually even out for most teams. So, Darren, what is your main beef about umpires?
Well, first of all, with even if they were to go do the system that you mentioned or robo umps, the umpire still got to be here to actually make the call. It's not like there's going to, just a sign's going to go up. So, but it drives me bananas when the calls are so egregiously bad, and it's more than one from the same ump. And it's always like there's only 4 or 5 guys, and it's always these guys. And I know they're learning. Go learn in AA. I mean, there's guys throwing 90 in AA and AAA. Go learn down there. Angel Hernandez is the one name that everybody talks about, but it's the same 4 or 5 guys, and they're usually young. Hernandez is not. But it's just when they're egregiously bad like that, and it's over the course of a game. Every ump blows a call, and I don't want robo umps. I like the fact I don't want to take the human element out of it. It's what part of the game that makes it great. It's just when they're that bad. I mean, they were awful calls, Mike.
For balls and strikes, take the human element. Who cares? Take the human element out for balls and strikes. What do you want the human element behind the plate for? There's no reason for it. The only reason you have to have the human element is to make calls at the plate. So there's got to be an umpire on standby. There's got to be an umpire lurking.
No, I'm not telling you to get rid of them. I'm just saying it's just if they have such a bad track record.
I'm telling you to get rid of them. I'm telling you to get rid of the home plate umpire. This way you won't have any arguments.
No. I don't want to get rid of them.
Why?
I don't want to get
why
rid
don't
of
you?
them.
Why don't you want to get rid of them?
4 or 5 umps.
Well, why? What's the point of the human element for balls and strikes?
Because I like having the human element. It's part of the game. It's the game I grew up in. That's how it is. Sometimes Mike,
who cares? The game you grew up in. The game you grew up in also didn't have a ghost runner at second base or bigger base. It's an evolving game.
I don't like the ghost runner either.
It's an evolving game. You don't need the human element for balls and strikes. You need the human element to call guys at safe or out at first base and second base and third base.
If it was every umpire and it was a league-wide problem, I would say, yeah, you're right. But again, it's always the same 3 or 4 guys. They just should not be behind the plate. They're not ready for it.
But see, here's the thing. The only reason we get on those umpires is because we have that box now
That's
on
true.
TV.
I agree with you.
That's the only reason.
That might be the solution. Get rid of the
put
box.
More heat on them.
Maybe that's
Right.
the answer.
All right. So let's continue with the baseball conversation, because last week I was glued. I was at the shore. It was a Friday afternoon. It was a nice beach day, but I was compelled to watch the Little League World Series because the media team, the team in my county here. No, that's actually Delaware County. I'm not Delaware County. I'm on the edge of Delaware County. So media is playing Washington, D.C. This is a team they whacked 16-3 in a previous game in the tournament. I look at it, it's nothing with 2 great pitchers on the hill. The media pitcher runs out of pitches, so they put another guy in. The other guy stays in there. Media doesn't have a hit. It goes to extra innings. It's 0-0. And there's a guy on second base, and the kid Gets a home run, a walk-off home run, a left-handed redhead kid to send media to Williamsport. What a dramatic moment. Congratulations to those kids. Now, they play Friday, I believe. Or is it Thursday? It might be Thursday at 7 o'clock. They play a team from Texas. I saw that team in Texas. They're good. So I'm gonna say that media will not be the favorite in that game. But let's root those kids on, man. The media Little League team. I hope a Pennsylvania team can win the Little League World Series. All right. Let's move on to the NBA Hall of Fame ceremonies this weekend. What a class was inducted into the Hall of Fame. Let me just read the names of the people who were inducted into the Hall of Fame this year. Oh my God, I can't. My phone. All right, there it is. Okay, Dwayne Wade, Dirk Nowitzki, Pau Gasol, Tony Parker, Greg Popovich, Becky Hammond, a couple media guys. That's a pretty strong class. But what stood out for me is that Dwayne Wade selected as the man to present him for the Hall of Fame entry, Allen Iverson. AI was the guy that Dwayne Wade wanted to present him. Before we got to that, Dwayne Wade got to the podium and talked about Allen Iverson. And I want you people to hear that. If you didn't hear it, this is Dwayne. Allen Iverson is sitting to his right on a chair, and Dwayne Wade speaks eloquently about the impact of Allen Iverson, and here it is.
As I reflect on my own destiny and the impact that my heroes have had on my life, I'm reminded that our heroes are not always perfect. Instead, they possess a relatability that makes them touchable and real. When anyone speaks about Allen Iverson, that's exactly what they say. He's real. So AI, I need you to know this. I watched you with awe because I saw a reflection of myself in you. The way you played the game was exciting and fearless. It didn't matter who they put in front of you. They wasn't gonna stop you. Shit, I know, I tried. It didn't matter what they said about you because they couldn't measure the size of your heart. Your authenticity and unapologetic attitude, it resonated with me. Your swagger, unique style for rocking do-rags, braids, the baggy shorts, to the untucked jerseys, the earrings, the chains, the throwback jerseys. It all combined to create an image that broke the mold. You challenged conventional norms and became the poster child for individuality and self-expression, inspiring countless individuals to embrace their own uniqueness. You brought hope to those who grew up with limited resources. You showed us that success and greatness were attainable, even in the face of adversity. Your struggles made your accomplishments that much more remarkable. AI, you are a living, breathing reminder that redemption and growth are possible. You inspired a generation, my damn self included, to believe that coming from nothing was not a limitation, but motivation. I wore an arm sleeve throughout my career because AI did. I respectfully wore the number 3 throughout my college and NBA career to represent the love and the respect that I have for this man. So from the bottom of my heart, you are the culture, and we love you, and we thank you, Allen Iverson.
All righty. So there you go. That was touching, man. If I'm Allen Iverson, I almost have tears coming out of my eyes with that. I almost had tears, and I'm not Allen Iverson. All right, let's move on to a little frivolity here, a little humor. For some reason, I got compelled to rewatch The Sopranos Season 3. A lot of people say that Season 3 is the best season. I don't know what it is. Season 3 in The Wire was also the best season. I think it's like 2 seasons in, the writers really feel themselves, and they expand the storyline, and they get really creative with it and deep with it. There were 2 great villains in The Sopranos for me always. I like them both. Richie Priel in season 2 and Ralph Cifaretto in season 3, who just blows every villain out of the water. What a creep, what a prick. All right, so in that season, perhaps the best episode of The Sopranos is season 3, episode number 11. Darren, do you remember what that was?
Not the top of my head.
Season 3, episode 11 was the Pine Barrens episode.
Oh, of course. Yes.
Okay, so now they're chasing the Russian, the ex-commando, who is a friend of Slava's, who they do a lot of business with, right? And of course they lose him. He escapes them into the Pine Barrens in the snowy terrain, and they think they shot him in the head, but they really don't know. But they get lost in the woods. So they're trying to communicate with Tony Soprano. And the connection of the cell phone is they're in the Pine Barrens, and it's dropping off, and they can't really hear what Tony's saying. So Tony is trying to explain to them that this guy that they think is a nobody is a somebody. And what he says to them is this guy was a commando in the Chechen rebel army, in the army that put down the Chechens. He killed 16 Chechens, and he was a member of the interior minister, the Russian interior ministry. So Paulie hears what?
He's an interior decorator.
Paulie hears, oh my God, this guy killed 16 Czechoslovakians, and he was an interior decorator. And Christopher says, he was an interior decorator. His place looked like shit. That was one of the greatest episodes ever. And I rewatched it last night. I'm telling you, that season is fantastic. So anyway, let's end Mike Unleashed with a little Sopranos reference. All right, it is time for my thought of the day. And my thought of the day, a lot of my thoughts of the day come with me making purchases, especially purchases at a grocery store. Now, at my grocery store, when you check out, they say, would you like to donate the change to whatever charity they got going at that point? And I need to ask people, and again, you can email. I love feedback on this. And you can email me, mike@mikemiss.com. What is the cutoff point for you to round off your change to donate to charity at a grocery store? Darren?
It's less than $1. I don't have a cutoff point. I don't always do it.
To me, I have a cutoff point.
Yes. Guess. Can I guess?
I have an automatic cutoff.
50 cents because you want the quarters back, like no less, right? So 49 cents. I'm guessing.
Well, quarters. What do you pay with cash?
You don't pay with cash? I don't always pay with cash.
You get quarters back in a slot machine?
Well, sometimes
quarters.
I pay with cash.
Yeah, no, the cutoff to me is 50 cents. If it's 50 or above, I don't donate. If it's less than 50 cents, I'll donate. Now, I don't know. Does that make me cheap? Does that make me generous? Like what? Because a lot of people won't donate at all. But as long as I got less than 50 cents, I go, well, you know what?
Well, first of all, I hit it right on the number. But oh my guess. But no, that's fair.
Well, was it difficult to hit it right in the middle?
My reasoning was a little skewed.
Well, Archimedes had to figure that out.
No, I think it's fair. I mean, I don't always do it. I feel bad. Sometimes I do it. Sometimes I don't. Usually, if it's,
sometimes I do it. Sometimes I don't. I will always do it if it's under 50 cents. I will always not do it. It's just to make my life
fair.
easier.
To me, it doesn't really. It's less than $1, so I'm not making a decision based on how much change there is.
Okay. All right. Here's the other question. Last question based on this note. You go into a sandwich shop. You order a sandwich. Every machine now is programmed. No tip, 15% tip, 20% tip, 25% tip. What do you do at a takeout shop where the person who doesn't even make the sandwich isn't bringing it to you? It's the person at the counter.
Yeah, see, there's a place in my town that does it for, and they make a great sandwich, Nene Market. But I don't do that because I have family in that business, and they're paying these kids make like $15 an hour now. It's not bad. So I don't know. I'm
So
not.
you don't tip.
No, not for certain. Not for
you
doing
press the
job.
no tip.
I hit the no tip, and I'm not a cheap guy. You know that. I'm always the first one to buy around.
For you pressing the no tip, you're cheap. Please, you could go 10% for crying out loud.
Tip the girl.
Go 10% at the very least.
She picks the sandwich up.
I get it. 10% going to kill you?
Well, I'm usually buying a few
Oh
sandwiches.
my
It could
God,
be a
you're a
$3-4
cheapskate.
tip.
We have just learned a little bit about Darren, producer Darren. Not even a 10% tip he'll lay down. All right, that'll do it for my thought
Set
of the
me
day. Let's end it. This podcast is brought to you by the great people at BetRivers. Again, to email me, it's mike@mikemiss.com, and you can email me with a sound off. Any kind of intriguing email you send me, you're going to be eligible for a hat, which I announce on my Friday blog on my website, which is mikemiss.com. We've given out a couple of great hats. We're wearing them here. You can't see it because it's not on video yet. I swear this is the longest road to video ever, but we are going to get it done. We are going to be on video by the next couple of weeks, I promise. And of course, if you want a little personal shout out, there's an organization out there called Cameo, an app. Download the app Cameo, stick my name in there. I'll give you a personal shout out for any occasion, wedding, graduation, going to college, fantasy football league, whatever it is. I'll announce your fantasy football league. Go to cameo.com and stick my name in there. All right. Everybody have a great rest of the day. We will talk to you with a new fresh podcast coming up on Thursday right here on BetRivers, the Mike Missanelli podcast. See you later, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Mike Missanelli podcast on the BetRivers Network.